on blast.
There's also something else, though, Webby, that we were here for last night.
We gotta talk. We gotta talk here.
And, there's a lot of different avenues to this because obviously it involves the Sixers, which is your team, your squad. It also involves the former general manager, or president and general manager of our Toronto Raptors, which makes this very interesting.
Current general manager of the Toronto Raptors.
Yes,
as well.
There's some shade being thrown at the current general manager and president of the Toronto Raptors. And I'll start here. So basically, for those who don't know, there's a article put out on theringer.com. Theringer.com, for those who don't know, is Bill Simmons' website that he started. And this is super interesting, obviously, as well, because Bill Simmons is a huge Celtics fan. So would he be pushing a narrative to try to disrupt the up-and-coming
I don't know.
conference rivals?
The Ringer does a lot of good. No, the Ringer does a lot of good independent work, and I've got a lot of time for their writers and their editors because some of their stories are excellent pieces of journalism. Some of them are, who's the best Bachelor contestant, but then they also have great music journalism and great sports journalism, great pop culture journalism. I don't think that this is any sort of narrative that Simmons as a pro-Boston guy is putting up.
Hold on, Webby. I'm definitely here for the extra pop culture stuff that the Ringer does. I'm here for all the Ringer stuff. I think what I was trying to get across was more so just it's a funny coincidence that this narrative is being pushed against the Sixers and not against another team. Because I just feel like, hey, when we're talking about burner accounts, I feel like there's a lot of people in NBA circles that probably have burner accounts.
Well, you know what's funny, too, is that I was reading that Coach K, back in 2010, 2012, got busted for the same thing.
Oh.
That he had burner accounts going to kind of follow recruits and stuff.
Follow recruits and see what they're up to. Makes sense. I mean, when you break it down, it definitely makes sense. But
that's part of professional sports nowadays.
I think that's part of
life.
Exactly. I was going to say, I bet probably a lot of people in normal everyday work offices, I wouldn't be surprised if they had burner accounts so they could follow what their employees were doing, right? Like, I wouldn't be surprised at any of that. Now, the difference here is, they're probably not throwing shade at said employees on those burner accounts. But that appears to be allegedly and what Bryan Colangelo was doing. And again, this started with an article on The Ringer that's titled "The Curious Case of Bryan Colangelo and the Secret Twitter Account." It says a collection of Twitter accounts that has criticized Joel Embiid and Markelle Fultz, disclosed sensitive information, and outlined team strategy shares eye-opening similarities. What does that have to do with the Philadelphia 76ers decision maker? So, Webby, can you give me a little rundown of just what this article entailed, what was going down? Break it down for people who might not have read the full article.
Okay, so there are 5 accounts in question here on Twitter. I don't think all of them were actively tweeting, but some of them were.
Yeah.
At least 2, if not 3 of them were tweeting. And they were tweeting not just opinions about some people that Bryan Colangelo is close to or used to work with, like Masai Ujiri, like a lot of Sixers players and upper management types. But these 5 accounts all seem to follow the same people.
Yeah.
Or groups of the same people. And when this reporter at The Ringer got this tip, he called the Sixers and said one account in particular that was almost kind of confirmed to him as Bryan Colangelo.
Yeah.
He reached out and said, hey, is this Bryan Colangelo? The team responded that, yes, Bryan Colangelo does have a Twitter account that isn't his name. But what really raised the red flags were that these other 4 accounts all shut down right after that phone call came in.
So this is a really important part, right? Because it's a red flag of it all. There are 5 Twitter accounts. They called, and they did this on purpose, which is a genius move, by the way, by the writer. They called the Sixers and let them know, hey, we got a tip that there are 2 Twitter accounts that kind of seem kind of fishy, that they lead to or point to Bryan Colangelo or someone within the organization. Can you please confirm or deny this? And they noticed that once they sent that message, all 5 went private. So the other 3 that they didn't even mention, but they didn't know that the Ringer were aware of the other 3 accounts, but magically those 3 accounts also went private and stopped tweeting. That is a big red flag here, right?
Absolutely. And then the digging started into those other 4 accounts or 5 accounts.
Yes.
What had they been saying? And those tweets were almost more incendiary than the one that had been kind of uncovered that was confirmed as Colangelo's second Twitter. These were things like, hey, talking to reporters saying, hey, you're a reporter, you're a blogger, why don't you ask the team for an interview to talk to Jahlil Okafor about his knee? Or
yes.
Masai Ujiri is a trust fund baby, and the only reason he has the job in Toronto is because of XYZ.
Yeah.
Or no one wants to see Joel Embiid up there at the Meek Mill concert dancing with no shirt on when he should be injured.
Yeah, I mean the way that this looks is that it's pointing to either Bryan Colangelo or someone very close to him trying to push out narratives that Bryan Colangelo obviously would not be able to say in front of a microphone to the media, but is trying to point people in certain directions, which makes absolutely no sense at all. Because why would like a random Twitter account that tells a writer, hey, you should probably ask this question, why is that writer going to answer that? Like, why, if this was Bryan Colangelo, why wouldn't you just use the normal means of leaking stories? Like, isn't that a whole part of how stories and get run in the NBA? No, like teams leak to Woj or leak to whatever different narratives and different storylines to get things out there. Like, isn't that a thing that already happens? Like, why would you need to go to a fake Twitter account and have an egg and think that that's going to be the way that, hey, injury status on Okafor or injury status on Nerlens Noel, that stuff needs to get out there, but nobody's reporting it. Like, I don't understand why that's the way you would go about that if you're Bryan Colangelo.
Because this way, if you're Bryan Colangelo, then now you're not seen as a leaker. And then you don't have that reputation around you.
But don't we already know that this stuff happens, right? Like teams, but just not at this level?
Yeah, well, I'm sure it does happen at this level, but then you've still got to keep in mind that your reputation is, as a leaker, is going to be out there because reporters are going to talk to other reporters.
Yeah.
Reporters are going to talk off the record with some of
agents,
their other sources.
To other agents,
and so on and so forth. Now, with this anonymity of social media in our life, now, if you're Bryan Colangelo and you do want to get something out there, you want to get a reporter's attention, this is what you do.
It is crazy. And the other thing is, so there was the stuff you mentioned about, these random Twitter accounts tweeting at reporters and getting into arguments with reporters or getting into arguments with fans about Bryan Colangelo's collars. There's a lot of talk about that. It's just really weird, this Eric Jr. account, right? Like,
yeah,
it's just really odd how this whole thing came about. But the one thing I wanted to bring up too was there's a really big link here, or what I would find interesting as a Raptors fan. There's a huge tie to Toronto, right? It's just all these things, and he's retweeting random tweets of someone saying a quote tweet of DeMar DeRozan saying Bryan, he loves Bryan's swag was always on 100. Like, this is just so ridiculous on so many levels. But you add in the parts where he's going at Masai Ujiri, and I'm just like, the level of petty matches someone who would have a fake burner account. No.
Now, are you up to date with everything that's happening? Because this is a fluid situation.
Oh, what's happened lately?
Because this evening, it's come out now that a lot of Philly Sixers bloggers and journalists have put together some things with the account, the phone number that's been associated with these accounts.
Okay.
And it leads back to Colangelo's wife. The cell phone number, it seems like that this is Colangelo's wife who's been running these burner accounts, which kind of makes a little more sense, right?
Well,
because some of these things that you can't imagine. And listen, we know a lot of people who have spent a lot of time with Bryan Colangelo, having both worked in Toronto sports media before.
yeah.
And from everything that I read about Colangelo and I've heard from him, this doesn't seem to fit with his personality.
Here's the thing,
right?
Webby. Like I can tell you, right? Like I talk about it sometimes on this podcast, but not really. But I've covered the NBA for 10 plus years. And while Bryan Colangelo was with the Raptors, I've actually had the pleasure of interviewing Bryan Colangelo more than on a few occasions.
Yeah.
And Bryan Colangelo is one of the more polished and like just professional dudes you will ever meet, right? And so for him to have a blunder like this is really catching me off guard because it's like, and again, this is all allegedly. We don't know if how like what the relationship is with him and these Twitter accounts, right? But to me, I just can't see someone who was normally in such a very like prim and proper and professional manner get caught up in something like this. From when I first read this, I was like, I don't know if this is him, but I feel like it's someone around him. But it has to be someone close enough that would obviously know the intricate details of certain things that are going on within the organization, right? So my assumption was, oh, I think it's got to be his son, or I thought it was maybe his dad, right? Like they had the
Jerry,
tweet,
yeah,
because there was one tweet about
Beijing.
Olympics and Dwayne Wade and Gabby Union, and saying that met Gabby Union and he watched her be rude to a fan or something in Beijing. Yeah. And Dwayne Wade took to Twitter to say, well, it must not have been, I guess we all look alike because it wasn't me and Gabby Union wasn't even in Beijing. So it's just like, there's so many things going on with this situation, right? And as I said, in my interactions with Bryan Colangelo, and I'm telling you, like, no, I'm not exaggerating to like, to boost anything or anything, but I'm saying I've had multiple interactions with Bryan Colangelo, and he's a super nice guy, super good guy, seems so professional, and I can't picture him making up multiple fake Twitter accounts to tweet dirt on Masai Ujiri. Like that just seems so weird and so shady.
Right.
And if you don't know like what some of these things are that he said about that the fake Eric Jr. account wrote about Masai Ujiri, and if you think about it, right? Let's go back because Masai was hired in 2013 to replace Colangelo, but before that, Colangelo was the one that brought Ujiri aboard as Toronto's director of global scouting, and then elevated him to assistant GM, right?
Right.
So then 2 years later, after a stint in Denver, Masai comes back, and now you have this Eric Jr. who's tweeting, quote, "Nothing seems to fall on Ujiri's shoulders." In response, this was in February 2017, in response to a column about a bad Raptors loss. In another tweet, the account suggested that Toronto was successful because of players Colangelo had originally brought in, such as Kyle Lowry and DeRozan. Quote, "They are falling apart because nothing was done to make them a better team." Close quote. "They're coasting on trust fund money." Wow. Then he chafed that Masai Ujiri, quote, "You were re-signed for 30 plus million this summer. So yes, please, Masai, do something." This just reads of like, I can't even picture, and I don't know Bryan Colangelo personally. I'm not saying that. My only interactions are professional manner. But I can't picture this man talking like this on a burner Twitter account. That just seems to be the dumbest thing ever. Like I can't believe it. But then again, Webby, in 2017 or 2018, shouldn't I believe it? I don't know what to do here.
It makes way more sense that it's someone that he knows and is close with and has shared his opinions about things like this.
Yeah.
You know, it may not be him, but it's definitely somebody close with him. And right now, I mean, the Sixers really only have one option.
You have to fire him, right?
It's to get the Colangelo'S out of the organization immediately. Not just because Colangelo got dunked on by Joel Embiid after this whole thing broke.
Oh my
with
goodness.
Joel going into the Twitter accounts, liking every tweet that was negative towards Embiid, and then coming up with one of the greatest tweets of sports in 2018, where he was acting like he was tweeting from a burner account and saying that Sam Hinkie is smarter and better than Eric Jr. will ever be. I thought that was amazing. But I
So
mean,
good.
listen, it's either it is Colangelo and you have to get him out of there,
Mhm.
or it's Colangelo, somebody close to Colangelo, and he's been sharing these secrets and doesn't have a handle on who's ever putting these out there in the Twitter sphere.
I look at this situation and I don't see how a full week will pass and Brian Colangelo will still have his job. Because again, if it's someone close, here's a real thing too, right? So the Sixers are launching their own internal investigation into this, right? And really, shouldn't that be really simple? Because if he's using, I'm sure he has a team phone and I'm sure he uses a team issued computer. So they could easily look into both those things and see if those passwords or logins or Twitter accounts have ever been linked to any of his things, right? And if I'm him,
Yeah,
I'm even handing over my personal phone to show that, hey, this was only mine. This was only my account, not any of the others, right?
but the problem is that even if he does that, these tweets were still sent out with information that only Colangelo would be privy to, right?
Not necessarily, though. It could be still someone close to him, and I don't know who it could be that he would make the scapegoat. But if it does turn out to be, because I was thinking again that it was either his dad or his son, like someone like that, right? And if he came out and said, "Oh, it was my son," whatever, like he still has to get fired, right?
Yeah, and if it's it's the same thing because it seems to be that it's the wife
Whoa, that is a crazy twist, and I don't even know, like,
allegedly.
allegedly, yes. Also, there was this tweet sent out earlier by Jordan Schultz, and Jordan Schultz works for Yahoo Sports as an insider and is also a co-host of a podcast with CJ McCollum. But Jordan Schultz says Brian Colangelo tells me via text, quote, "Someone's out to get me. This is clearly not me." Colangelo adds that he's, quote, "hopeful to resolve this soon." So tons going on here for Ryan Colangelo, and I do not know how this is going to be a thing. Oh, I found this here. I see this now, Webby. This from the Did the Sixers Win account,
Yeah,
right? Is this what you were talking about here? And it
yeah,
says
yeah, 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 yeah.
Colangelo's wife, Barbara Bettini, I don't know if I'm
Yeah.
pronouncing that right, has a phone number ending in 91, almost certainly linking her, and I'm reading this tweet off the internet, so I'm gonna add an allegedly here. Almost certainly linking her to 3 of the burner accounts. Now, again, I'm saying allegedly here. Okay, I'm saying allegedly. I'm just reading this off the internet, but this is amazing. It looks like they found an email address. Oh wow, this is so crazy.
I
This is
know
like
it's
the deep dive.
investigative.
It's amazing the way that the internet works now. Like you can't mess up because the internet is gonna
We're gonna
find.
find you. We're gonna find you.
The other weird part to all this was that Adrian Wojnarowski, who we know is just the man when it comes to anything involving the NBA, he was very quick in terms of putting stuff out there that made it seem like he was also pointing his finger at Colangelo. No? There were some
A little
tweets
bit.
there that were so first off from Woj, he said, let's see here. He first had the word from Joel Embiid, and Joel Embiid said that Colangelo, he said, I talked to him, and he said that he didn't say that. He called me just to deny the story. Got to believe him until proven otherwise. If true, that would be really bad. Cool. Next, Woj said, maybe there's an IT person who can prove it wasn't Brian Colangelo, but here's one of the biggest problems in disputing the Ringer's story. Those tweets reflected not only private team biz, but launched personal beef slash jealousies slash frustrations that he shared inside and outside the Sixers. Again,
Right.
I'm going to read that again. Those tweets reflected not only private team biz, but launched personal beefs, jealousies, frustrations that he shared, as in Colangelo, inside and outside the Sixers. So that means these are things that people already knew were floating around, and now you're seeing it pinned to a fake Twitter account that allegedly is linked to Colangelo. That to me is Woj saying that there's rumblings to this and people are talking. No,
Oh yeah.
I don't know.
But still,
Webby.
but that's why
As a Sixers guy, what do you want to happen here?
you got to fire Colangelo immediately.
Ooh.
I'm surprised that it's taken this long. I mean, this is an embarrassing story to come out for a team, like you said, that's on the ascension,
Mhm.
and to have your GM involved in a kind of a scandal like this. It's unacceptable. And like I said, even if it wasn't him that was sending the tweets, it's somebody that's close enough to him to understand that these beefs and jealousies and then making them public. And that's something that you just can't have happen.
I just saw your tweet right now. I'm not even gonna, that's amazing, Webby. You're hilarious. Um, the other thing here with all this, right? That I will say, the other thing that I find super, 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 super interesting here. This discussion, I was listening to a Lebitard show on my way home, and I love the Lebitard show. And I advise if you love sports fans, if you love sports, but more so if you like fun things, I advise that you listen to the Dan Lebitard show. But they went off on this whole tangent about how Hinkie can be behind this because if you think about it, the Ringer did an article on uh, Hinkie a couple years ago, or maybe it was last year, just about what he's up to. And they use a term describing what he's into now is that he works with artificial intelligence.
Right.
If you go to who the source is on this Ringer story, all it says is the person said they work in artificial intelligence. Now, I'm sure there's probably a lot of people in this world that work in artificial intelligence. I don't know how many people in this world work in artificial intelligence and also have ties to the NBA or would care about the NBA more so the Sixers. But the question lies here, Webby. Could this be a whole like just hinky smear campaign? Because if you break it down, isn't it kind of easy that you could set this up for anyone? Right? Like you could set up burner accounts and make it seem like it's someone else.
No, like what I mean, that just adds a little richness to it. I mean, if this is a power play by Hinkie, that would be amazing. But I don't think it's something that's made up because a lot of these were like about Hinkie.
Yeah.
And
yeah,
about
but hey,
how,
come on, that's just a throw off the scent, right?
oh man, I mean that's some James Bond level shit. But I mean, it would be amazing if it was Hinkie that came to the Ringer and came up with these algorithms that prove that Bryan Colangelo or somebody very close to him was using these burner accounts.
Because the other thing here is, right, it's like, let's say it's Hinkie. Let's say he anonymously goes to the Ringer and says, hey, I have all this information. Trust me, just ask them. And you'll be able to find out. And then they're like, okay, we're going to ask them. You ask them, you automatically shut down the other accounts at the same time. That looks hella fishy. Because you would know that they're about to ask the Sixers, no?
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm just saying. I just think this whole thing is so crazy. And it's hilarious because it sums up the NBA perfectly right now, right? Because there's a gap between when the NBA Finals starts, right?
Yeah.
And even after two great Game 7s that would have carried the conversation until the start of the NBA Finals, it's like just in case you were thinking of being bored with the NBA, oh no, here comes a story that you've never heard of before in any other sport. And that's why I love the NBA.